If I have to explain to you what BIPOC is, this is probably not going to be the conversation for you, to be very honest.
Welcome to the playground. It's me, Shanila. This is your place for spiritual exploration, personal development, and intuitive entrepreneurship. If we don't know each other already, hi, I'm Shanila. I'm a 4th-generation sound healer, breathwork coach, and the founder of Always Play Studios, where I train sound healers, breathwork facilitators, and mentor aspiring healers. If you're down to come learn, explore, and expand, let's play.
Hello, playground. Let's have this conversation all about healing in BIPOC spaces and healing in predominantly BIPOC-led spaces. And if I have to explain to you what BIPOC is, this is probably not going to be the conversation for you, to be very honest. And I'll also mention to you that, who I hold space for predominantly in the mentorships and the intuitive entrepreneurships, masterminds, trainings, and all the different things that I've got going on tend to be for people who are typically from underrepresented, marginalized, underserved, and BIPOC communities. And so this is my angle of how actually healing in BIPOC spaces and BIPOC-led spaces is a really, really, really important factor to keep in mind as you are on your personal healing journey, or you're on your personal healer's journey, whatever part of that you're on. This is something to keep in mind as you progress. So let's just start off with the fact that all healing spaces are not created equal. And that is a good thing because not all experiences are created equal, and not all resources are created equal. Not all trainings are created equal. Not all enter the blank are created equal. And so it is actually really, really beautiful and needed that we have different places for different people to heal. Okay. And I know that we all want to be like love and light, all is one, and everybody does the one thing right here is like we're all going to heal together. I love that in theory, but in practice, we're at a part in our evolution, in our societal consciousness that is just not appropriate for all demographics and for all people. And so what I mean by that is, BIPOC, and even in that sense, Black, Indigenous, people of color, there's so many nuances to that, right? Like there's so many nuance to a Black experience or an indigenous experience or a person of color experience. There's so many angles and layers and intersectionality to that, even just by itself. And the thing is that when we, especially BIPOC people, go into predominantly white spaces and white-led spaces, a lot of our experiences are kind of just whitewashed, ignored, they're not understood, and they're kind of defaulted to be inconvenient almost, right? Like you having an immigrant experience, or you living in a multi-generational home, or you having these kinds of responsibilities, they're kind of thought to be like these weird outcasty things that you particularly have experienced that doesn't actually fit into the bigger westernized lens. Okay. And this isn't to isolate you or me or anybody's experience, but it's very, very common that a lot of BIPOC actually have really suppressed their lived experience, and they've also been oppressed by certain spaces that have required them to suppress their experience because it's thought to be like weird or inconvenient, or because somebody doesn't understand what that experience feels like, they kind of overlook that, they kind of pass over it, wash over it, right? And it's not to blame the facilitator of a space or the therapist of a space, but it is also to blame the facilitator of a space and the therapist of a space. Okay. And oftentimes I know that BIPOC, especially if you are somebody who's been seeking, support in your mental health, emotional health, physical health, spiritual growth, and whatever context, you've been wanting to expand in, even in your business growth, your entrepreneurship growth, there are certain angles that are just not understood in predominantly white held spaces. And this is not to say like nobody understands and nobody gets you and that you have to only exist in X, Y, and Z spaces. No, but I want you to also kind of go deeper within yourself and do a little bit of introspection and see the difference between being held in predominantly BIPOC-led spaces predominantly BIPOC led spaces versus anything else. And you'll immediately notice the different levels of connection, the overlap in experience, the expansion in the way that people actually understand you and the way what you're saying is going to change. And we need to lean more into that. We actually do need to lean more into that. And I'll speak for myself personally. I've been in lots of different types of healing spaces by different facilitators from all different types of background and everything else. And there is just a different sense of safety physiologically, energetically, mentally, and there is just a little bit more ability to let my guard down in places where I know that they're going to understand, even if not word for word. They're not going to understand everything that I've gone through. Obviously, no one will, right? That's not the goal. It's that there is more of a safety in these places. And so even just the way that, BIPOC people and people from underrepresented communities experience and process trauma, and the way that we're able to talk about it within our communities is so vastly different than in other spaces, right? So definitely certain cultures have more taboo around therapy and seeking help and breaking through generational toxic behaviors and people pleasing and drawing boundaries. There's just a different layer to that experience than people who, call their moms and dads like swear words, right? There's such a different context to the way that we have grown up, especially in BIPOC communities. There is certain expectations that are ingrained within us, whether it's right or wrong or toxic or not toxic. I'm not talking about that part in this conversation. I'm just saying that there is a whole angle of our experience that is a little bit different. And so when you do your healing work, it's nice to do it from the lens and the angle of the way that you experienced it versus from somebody else's angle who, maybe is trying to relate to you, maybe understands that angle, maybe has read about it in a book, but reading things conceptually and actually having experienced and lived that are so different, right? Reading about something and then actually having done and been there and, gone through that is such a vastly different thing. And so healing in BIPOC spaces, what does that actually mean? It means that go find the people who are speaking to you in the way that you want to be spoken to and the way that you want to be listened to and the way that you want to be held in the space. And it even goes down to the expression of their healing spaces, right? What does that aesthetic even look like? You're going to be drawn to something because it's going to feel like you don't have to go and pretend. That is such a huge difference. And I definitely know that, as people on their healing journey, there is trial and error. You do try out different facilitators, different mentors, absolutely try stuff on. But at the same time, you and your gut and your intuition know that you're getting drawn to a person because they're speaking into you, right? They're speaking into you, and you just feel like they freaking read your mind. And especially in the BIPOC community, we struggle in such a big capacity to find those relatable people, and the people who are representing us, the people who were just oh shit, you get it, and you're like my sister. I feel like you're talking to me like a big sister, or I feel like we're family in a certain way, even though there is the dynamic of facilitator versus healer versus whatever, client in the space. There is still that dynamic, obviously, but you just feel a different layer of safety and a different layer of being seen, and that is so important in the healing journey. And we can't ignore that piece as we're, choosing what types of spaces we're going to facilitate and what types of spaces that we want to participate in too. And on the other angle too, if you're somebody who is holding space for other people, it's actually pretty important for you to decide who is it that you hold space for. Because on the other angle, even if you are from a BIPOC space, or even if you are a BIPOC facilitator, BIPOC mentor, whatever it is, you still have to decide who is it that you're holding space for, and are you qualified to hold that space, right? You don't want to get in the way of somebody else's journey just because you want clients, or just because you want to fill up your program, or just because you want to, have more people in your group, or whatever that is, And it doesn't mean that like your group only has to be this type of person or this kind of person or from this kind of background. It just means that as long as you're being intentional and also taking care of your own resources, and also doing any kind of introspection that allows you to decide like, wait a second, I actually don't understand this angle, and they're going to be better suited in this other container through this journey of their personal growth, because I feel like they're having to educate me all the time, and that's just not fair for somebody I'm holding space for right now. And it's not that you won't ever get educated by, your clients and the people you're holding space for. You absolutely 100% will, but how much of their time are they spend educating you and like pacifying you and making sure that you're comfortable in your understanding? And right, like there is a fine line and dynamic to that. So as we close out this conversation, I just want to mention to you, healing in BIPOC spaces is important. And I don't think you should feel guilty that you do want to participate in BIPOC spaces. And I don't think you should feel guilty for wanting to hold predominantly BIPOC spaces. And that intention is really important. It gives us a better ability and a better safety to heal. And it also gives us openness to conversations that we want to have that a lot of us have suppressed in other types of spaces. And that's just true. That's just facts. And if you are not from a BIPOC community and you've been listening to this conversation, these are really great seeds to plant in your own mind, for you to do a little bit of research around, for you to kind of go seek out the resources that help you hold the types of spaces that you want to hold. Okay. Go learn from BIPOC folks, go heal with BIPOC folks, go collaborate with BIPOC folks, and all of that. And at the same time, understand that there is safety in allowing BIPOC folks to have their BIPOC folks spaces. And that is something that is absolutely necessary going forward. So friends, I enjoyed having this conversation with you inside the playground. And if you enjoyed this convo, absolutely subscribe to this podcast so you get notified anytime I drop a new episode. And we have tons of conversations around intersectionality, spirituality, intuitive entrepreneurship, and all that personal growth. And of course, if you're interested to come train in breathwork, sound healing, immersions, masterminds, the healing arts practitioner training immersion, all that good stuff, you can head on to alwaysplay.org and find all the details there. And until next time, I will catch you soon.